I take a koan from the collection Mumunkan, case number 41. I read and will explain a little. Bodhidharma sat in zazen facing the wall. The second patriarch, who had been standing in the snow, cut off his arm and said, "Your disciple's mind is not yet at peace. I beg you, my teacher, please give it peace." Bodhidharma said, "Bring the mind to me, and I will set it at rest." The second patriarch said, "I have searched for the mind, and it is finally unattainable." Bodhidharma said, "I have thoroughly set it at rest for you." It is a very interesting koan, simple but still profound. Of course, in practice, you can either do shikandasa, just sitting in silence, being with yourself, or you can do koan work. Actually, even sitting by oneself also involves a koan, your life koan, or you can take some koan and meditate over that and sit with yourself. But very often people just sit, being with yourself, letting be yourself. But the koan practice is also very meaningful and opens you to deeper insights. Bodhidharma is supposed to be an Indian monk, Buddhist monk, who went to China in the 6th century and then taught this form of meditation. These are all legends. We don't know how far historically true these are. There is a Tamil film, Aindam Morai, something like that. This is simply hatchet work, simply confusing. They simply destroy the whole story. Okay. So, Bodhidharma, supposed to be God. Remember, in those days, traveling through the ocean, seas, he went through the seas. Take 3 years it took, it seems. And some of the Chinese pilgrims came all over the land route. Can you imagine? There's so many dangers and problems. Took years from Chang'an and come all the way Afghanistan, Pakistan and India. All the way. There were quite many Chinese pilgrims, they came like this. And Indian monks and also Buddhist was in Afghanistan. Afghanistan monks went to China to teach Buddhism in those olden days. Actually, Buddhism was in China in the 2nd century of the Christian era already. I saw the White Horse Temple. That was supposed to be the first Buddhist temple. I'm not sure how historical it is. So now Bodhidharma, he goes to China. He meets a emperor, you know the story in Hegikan Roku. Emperor asks some questions and Bodhidharma answers, and the emperor is not satisfied. Bodhidharma goes away. He's supposed to have gone to Shaolin mountains, you see, monastery and mountains. And then he sat for 9 years in meditation, facing the wall in a cave. I and some of my friends visited Shaolin. There were all martial arts. The monks were training. And then they showed me some distance in the mountain, a cave. There, Bodhidharma sat. I was too tired, I couldn't walk up. I said, that's enough to have seen that cave. And so he sat for 9 years meditation. These are all myth, you see. Anyhow, and there were already Buddhist monks already before Bodhidharma. You see, they were translating Buddhist scriptures. But Bodhidharma supposed to be expert teaching in this form of meditation. So he sat for 9 years. And then only one man comes to be a disciple. His name is supposed to be Yakka, or Japanese Huike. And also they say Shingan, or is Shingo, they will say the original name, but it doesn't matter. So he comes and then he wants to instruction. Bodhidharma doesn't care. He is simply sitting facing the wall. I read the story. This is supposed to be only legendary, you see, not real historical. He, that disciple, went over there, Shorin Sea, and day and night beseeched Bodhidharma for instruction. The master always sat in sasana facing the wall and paid no attention to his entreaties. On the evening of December 9, heaven sent down a heavy snow. Shingo stood erect, Shingo the name, Shingo stood erect and unmoving. Toward daybreak, the snow reached above his knees. The master had pity on him and said, "You have long been standing in the snow. What are you seeking?" Shingo in bitter tears said, "I beseech you, O master, with your compassion, pray open your gate of dharma and save all our beings." The master said, "The incomparable truth of Buddhas can only be attained by eternally striving, practicing what cannot be practiced, and bearing the unbearable. How can you, with your little virtue, little wisdom, and with your easy and self-conceited mind, dare to aspire to attain the true teaching? Only it is so much labor lost." Listening to the master's admonition, Shingo took out his sharp knife, cut off his left arm, and placed it in front of the master. And the master, recognizing his dharma caliber, told him, and so on, you see, and then, "Okay, what do you want?" And then Shingo says, "My mind is not at peace. Please, master, give it peace." And then the story goes, you see, "Bring your mind and I will give it rest." Of course, the mind is unattainable, he says. So the first point, of course, you can talk on many things. This sort of striving, very often, we think it's easy to attain realization and so on. It's not physical labor. You must be one-pointed, determined, going the way, sort of, committing yourself. This is a long way in essence, and struggle. And so Shingo, or Ekka was the name he given to him later on, Huike. And so he really struggled and then comes and begs the master. And then the master, of course, finally takes pity on him and then teaches him. And he says, "My mind is restless. Mind means my soul or my heart or myself," we can say. You see, mind is simply in general. My heart mind is restless with no peace. What could be the reason he has no peace? Peace of heart, peace of mind. What can be the reason? There can be many reasons. Of course, it's not ordinary, silly reasons. So I don't have breakfast, therefore I am restless. No, it's not that. And usually, this serious case, this is facing death, actually. Somebody has written a book, The Denial of Death. Simply that means, death, what happens? Most of the people perhaps think death will disappear, finished, we fall into nothingness. And so that was the sort of, perhaps, that was the problem. What happens? Who am I? That is the question. Who am I? And when I die, what happens? Everything gone. And so he struggled and then asks Master, "Please, my heart and mind are restless, without peace. Give me peace." So how can you give peace? And so many of the time, let me say, many of the religions and so on talk about afterlife very often, you see, very often. So what happens after life? Even Christianity, for example, Christianity actually, it's a problem. Perhaps you don't realize, Christians and sisters don't realize. Resurrection is a problem. the two sort of theories. One is the soul is immortal. Even Jesus seems to have been believing that. Jesus says, don't be afraid of those who put to death your body. Be afraid of God who will sort of condemn your soul and body. And so, but actually biblical scholars say that is only Greek idea, the soul is immortal. That's not a biblical idea. Bible, it says, you die completely dead, finished. And then God will raise you up. You see, the resurrection is God will raise you up, body and soul. Too many problems. You see, you can't solve this problem. And also, when will it be, and all those things, how will the body come, and too many problems, it is not solved. Christian theologians have not solved. Only thing is, there is a resurrection they can believe. And Buddhism, there is a problem also. They will say no self. But Buddha talks about Jataka stories all the time, reincarnation, coming birth after birth, acquiring virtues and selflessly. What is that then, you see? And Buddhism also believes in reincarnation somehow. Who is reincarnated? Too many problems, you see. Hinduism will talk about all the time we are born again and again. But when will it be liberation? When will it be moksha? We don't know, endless. And they say all the problems. And even Advaita is also a major problem. What is Atman? What is Brahman? How do you define? That's a problem. Not only that. And they will say, your ordinary self is illusion. Illusion? Who am I then? You see, all those too many problems. They don't solve. All of them talk about after death, you see. And Zen doesn't talk much about after death. It has to be here and now, in this life, here and now. And so now, let me explain a little. Now, you see, this Shingo or Yekka talking about, for example, my mind and heart is restless. It has been life cost, you see, life cost. Shibayama Roshi, who wrote the commentary, he says, a Christian theologian says, you who have not spent sleepless nights in suffering and tears, who do not know the experience of being unable to swallow even a piece of bread, the grace of God will never reach you. You see, that means, have you not hungered? Even Jesus says, those hunger and thirst for justice, you must hunger and thirst, long for this. Otherwise, I am all right, everything is okay, I am Buddha, I am the Atman. That's nonsense, you see. And so, how do you realize this dimension, you see? And so that, and of course this story is simply summarized, you see. It is simply partly legendary, it's not really historical, but summary. So when Yekka says, he says, yes, I searched for the mind, it is finally unattainable. It's not in 5 minutes doing. It's all life cost. He has struggled. Who am I? That's the question. Who am I? How do I realize my true self? What is life after death? He has struggled for long. And that is why he comes for Bodhidharma. I have struggled for long. So help me. How do you awaken? And then he says, he himself has the answer in this sense, you see. And finally, the mind is unattainable. Mind or heart is unattainable. That is an important point, unattainable. Unattainable simply means it is not an object. It's not a thing. And then what is it? So let me explain a little for you. You see, we can talk about ourselves, I and me. Me, you can describe me, the body, Indian, the old and so on, me. This is a sort of objectification. But the I, ich, I, you can't grasp. Of course, we talk all the time, I. Even they talk about it's only indexical name, that means, pointing out you, I, and so on. I mean, leave out all those things, I. Can you grasp the I? Can you know the I? See, whenever you say, I am trying to know myself, who is that talking, know myself? Whenever you talk about, I want to know myself, I want to grasp myself, I want to sort of experience myself, who is talking? The who talks, he can never grasp. It is always like, horizon. When you look at the horizon, when you go, it goes and goes. It is always like this. The who cannot be grasped. The subject I cannot be grasped. First realization you must have. That is here and now. It's not abstract. It is yourself concretely. One side, as I said, me, you can objectify. I am this, I am that, and so on. All those things, you see. I am mood and emotional, all those things you can describe. But the I, you can't. You can say only I. You can't describe. Describe in the sense, it is only subject, self. You can't grasp it. Whenever you try to grasp I, it goes further. And you try to fathom I, it goes further. For yourself, see, please try to think about that a little. You see, how can you realize I? How can you know I? You cannot. As soon as you say I, only me will come. Me is an object in the world. I is not object in the world. If it is an object, you can point out, you can identify, and all those things. I can, as subject, I cannot be identified, you see. But others can say, you, that's different, you see. But I, myself, you cannot grasp. And so he says, the mind is unattainable. That is the first realization. Even when you talk about emptiness, no self, that is the basic meaning. The self, I, is unattainable. You see, you can't grasp it. It is always eludes you. And secondly, and then second point is, at the same time, I can know, you see, we know the world, everything. How do we know? It is only through our consciousness we can know. We can know only through our consciousness. And in that sense, remember, all the world somehow flows into us. And so we can know the world. See, when you see the tree, for example, how do you see the tree? You are aware of the tree. You are conscious. And the tree has entered you. The tree has entered you. Only through consciousness and you can grasp the tree. Otherwise you can't grasp. Anything like that for that matter, you can know only through our consciousness, you see. Otherwise they are only, you are unknown, that's all, you see. When you know things, you know only through your consciousness, through your mind, through your knowledge. And so much so we can say, our consciousness, I, is the light which enlightens the world. Our consciousness can sort of, throws light on the world and the world becomes open, sort of illumined, and we can see. So when you talk about I, it's a basic consciousness and we can know only through consciousness, through I. So otherwise you cannot know. You see, you can simply feel something like body, mind, but even there you must become conscious to know anything. Otherwise you cannot know. So that second point, you see, the first point is Our I is unattainable. Unattainable. You cannot attain. And so when he says about death or suffering and restlessness, these are all limited realities. These are all finite realities. These are all defined realities. You see, death is something limited, something finite, something contingent, something particular. Birth is like that, death is like that. But if the self is unattainable, it's beyond all that. Remember, it will not, this self cannot be touched by these things. But remember, we have got two sides. One side is me, other side is I. But in one sense, we can say simply, as you read in Heart Sutra, form and emptiness. Emptiness is form. This is a form. And the form is emptiness. You can't grasp emptiness. That is two dimensions, you see. Always emptiness takes form. And emptiness cannot be apart from form. Form is taking form of emptiness. And so we talk about two dimensions. Two dimensions, a way of talking, you see. Actually, this is one self, but we are talking as a help, you see. And that is, let me once again repeat, self is, this I is unattainable, unobjectable, unlocated. It cannot be located, the I. It is not in the world, so to say. And then at the same time, this I illumines all the world. This self-I means this fundamental consciousness. Only through that we can experience the world, we can see the world. The world sort of enters you. That is the second point. Third point, that is a little difficult. That, of course, you can see, you can put it different ways. I very often talk about emptiness is a mystery that is grace and so on, but I don't want to use these. You see, in general, let me say, in Zen says, I die, I do not die. That is rather vague. I die, I do not die. I die. Our physical body dies. You see, our limited body dies. That we must realize. We die. We must go through death, experience of death in a sense. But Zen also says, I do not die. What is that I which does not die? We can't define that I which does not die. You see? And so more or less it comes to the self is unattainable. But can you imagine? You can't really imagine. You see, there is one Buddha supposed to have said, let me read that quotation. Vacha, Buddha says to his one of the disciples, Vacha, all form, sensation, perception, predispositions and consciousness by which one could predicate the existence of the saint. Saint means the Buddhist monk or enlightened person. All these have been abandoned, uprooted, pulled out of the ground like a palmyra tree and become non-existent and not liable to spring up again in the future. The saint Vacha, who has been released, is deep, immeasurable, unfathomable, like the mighty ocean. To say that is reborn would not fit the case. To say that he is not reborn would not fit the case. To say that he is both reborn and not reborn would not fit the case. To say that he is neither reborn nor not reborn would not fit the case. That simply means, I do not die. That is beyond all categories. There is no human categories to apply to that dimension. We can't really know, so to say. You see. And so the Buddha is neither nihilistic nor substantialist. He doesn't simply affirm, yes, you are going to leave. He doesn't say that. And he doesn't say, you are finished, nothing more. He doesn't say that. he says the saint after death, it's immeasurable. You can't grasp. That you must realize, I do not die, you see. But I would say something more. We must also use some imagination as a help for us, you see. As a help for us. I said the self is unattainable, immeasurable, ineffable, unobjectifiable. At the same time, it is in the light of the self we can know all the world. Otherwise we cannot know the world. And the third, that is little difficult for you to say, it is infinite light. It is infinite light. And that is our sphere where we exist, infinite light. We can't talk about I, you, and all those things. Simply say infinite light. You enter into infinite light, that dimension, you see. In Bible actually, Apostle Paul talks about Timothy, you see. God dwells in light inaccessible. Inaccessible. Light cannot be accessed, but God dwells. That is the light, our home, that dimension. That dimension. That means, here and now, you must come a little awareness of this dimension. The self is unattainable, yes, and also the self pervades all the world, yes, but at the same time, it is infinite light, that deep sense, and eternal light, so to say. See, light is very often used, almost even Zen. You see, actually Zen, in Denkorok, that is what you call, Keisan made about 48 or 52 cases about Zen masters. He talks about Denkorok in Japanese, it means transmission of light. Awakening is transmission of light, you see. And so it is a light. Zen also will talk about light. And all religions will talk about light. Light, inaccessible light, not ordinary human earthly light. It's a light beyond light. That is where we enter into that. And that means, I don't know whether you realized now, that means you realize we die and we have got all the problems and failures. At the same time, you must awaken to this dimension. We are in eternal light, infinite light, divine light we want to say. And that light doesn't belong to us, doesn't belong to anybody, doesn't belong to God also, nothing. It is simply light. It is light, and that is our abode. And only when we experience this dimension, all these three go together. But this light dimension is, I would say, very much important, you see. And that means, you are in ordinary life. Remember to dwell in that light. In your ordinary life, dwell in the light. In ordinary life, dwell in the self which is unattainable. In ordinary life, dwell also in the openness to all the world. Sinners, saints, angels, demons, all the world. Be aware. But above all, this unapproachable, inaccessible light, that is where you are. Here and now, not yesterday, not after death. After death is a fantasy. Forget that. Here and now, this life, you are living in that dimension. And when you experience that, somehow come to live in that dimension, that is a radical healing. You see, we are all mean. We are all failing. We have got all problems. We are all struggling. We are imperfect. We are sinners. But when we experience this dimension, we are healed. We are forgiven. We are all right. We can come back to live in this life. And only then we can sort of come to compassion, to mercy, to love, and so on. Most of the time, particularly Soto Zen and so on, they are too much sort of ethical dimension. Do this, you must practice this, you must have compassion. That's no good, you see. These are all simply commandments. It's beyond commandments, this dimension. You realize yourself living in sort of inaccessible light. Yourself is in that dimension dwelling. At the same time, yourself also, your ordinary face. You are living in this world. And this is precious life. Don't forget that. Don't simply think only that life is there. No. Emptiness is form all the time. Emptiness cannot be divorced from form. Form and emptiness go together. Live this life. But then, because by the virtue, by the living, by being touched with that eternal light, and you come back to the ordinary life, and you are healed. And so, Yakka, my soul is restless. I can't find peace. And Bodhidharma says, have you realized this self is unattainable? Yes, that is the peace. He doesn't give. That's a realization. Bodhidharma can only guide a little, guide you. And then you awaken. It is all right. It is all right. And so then you can be at peace. You can die, you can suffer. It is all right. Even in suffering and so on, remember to dwell in that dimension. Go back to the dimension. Actually, in actual suffering, it's very difficult to come. In actual suffering, what we can say is, let it be, or let your will be done. We can say at least, we must practice that, you see. Sort of surrender, acceptance. I think Farsil was talking about that yesterday. And so, surrender, acceptance. But then, when at least must be able, after suffering, to envision this light, that is your home, that is yourself. Be aware of the dimension. And you are that. So both dimensions you are there. The finite, limited dimension and that unlimited dimension. Just be aware of that, you see. And this dimension also, in the koan, the practice all, most of the koans will be doing only about, not this dimension, but about self is unattainable. At the same time, self is all the world. You come back as a self, as a world, so to say. That is our koan practice. And so come back again and again. But anyhow, let me repeat once again, you see. Remember, we live on two dimensions. It is a help. Don't take it sort of literally, you see. On awakening, you sort of overturning all these things, you see. Come back to be overturned, sort of take a leap. But as a help, self is both the dimensions. The ordinary dimension, the me, and also the unattainable dimension. The unattainable dimension, you are embracing all the world, but alone that's not enough. And you are dwelling in the light inaccessible, eternal light, so to say. You can put images, other images, but for me the light is the best image, you see. Light, that dimension. Only when you enter the light, you can come back to the world, forgiven, in peace, accepting all those things, you see. Accepting all our life. It is all right. It is all right. This is, so to say, the kingdom of heaven. You are entering into the kingdom of heaven. Jesus on the cross supposed to have said to the thief, today you enter into the kingdom of heaven. You see, today, not yesterday or day before yesterday, tomorrow. Today, you see, you are entered into the kingdom of heaven. And you have to enter into the kingdom here and now. And the Zen practice is that. Sasan practice also is that. So you can't, of course, imagine too much. At least in some sort of faith and trust, abide in that dimension which is non-abiding. That dimension, you see. Ungraspable dimension. Be in that dimension. See, and so, I put on the nice quotation at the entrance, abide where there's no abiding. There's no abiding, no security, no objects, but you abide, filling the whole universe and dwelling in the light, sort of unapproachable, inaccessible light, that dimension, you see. That much is enough, you see, Kovan. And so he has finally come to peace. You must also come to peace like that, slowly. We are all, caught by too many problems, too many sort of, not only problems, worried, all the things. So we must come to peace, some peace. Jesus said, I give you peace, not as the world gives. You see, the world peace, that's useless. You can be at peace one day, emotionally, next day you are gone. You see, no more peace. The peace which the world cannot give, that sort of peace. It's not tomorrow or day or after yesterday. Here and now must realize the peace which the world cannot give, you see. This is what I am talking. But anyhow, let me end a story. Bodhidharma, of course, legendary figure. Lot of stories are there about Bodhidharma in Japan, actually. Too many stories, mythical stories, legendary stories, and so on. But anyhow, before he left, he's supposed to have left his disciples and come back to India. And so he calls his disciples, to test how enlightened they are. Before Bodhidharma returned westwards to India, he called his disciples and asked them, each of you tell me what you attained. Tao replied, as I see it, true truth neither adheres to words or nor letters, nor is it apart from them. It functions as the way. The master said, you have attained my skin. The nun Sungchi, there was a nun also, successor. The nun Sungchi said, as I understand it, truth is like the auspicious glimpse of the Buddha land of Akshobhaya. It is seen once, but not a second time. The master said, you attained my flesh. Tao, you said, the four great elements are originally empty. The five skandhas have no existence. As I believe, no dharma can be grasped. The master said, you attained my bones. Finally, there was Huiko, it's Ekka, this man whom we talked about. Ekka, he bowed respectfully and stood silently. The master said, you attained my marrow. Marrow means what is in the bone. You see, of course, Dogen will say everybody attained marrow, but also, each tests and so on realizes how. Finally, it is said, only Ekka was the disciple, only one disciple. And then humorously, Mumon will say, and he was one-handed fellow, you see. He is a sort of disabled fellow, not even fully functioning fellow. And Bodhidharma transmits. Also, Bodhidharma supposed to be, taught Shaolin arts, martial arts, you see. Martial arts, actually, Kerala, there were a lot of martial arts. In Tamil Nadu also, they say most likely they went from here to China. I don't know how far true and so on. You see, the Chinese also came here. Lot of commerce and so on. They were there. They learned and so on. Doesn't matter. You see, Bodhidharma taught martial arts in order to defend themselves without a weapon. Defend themselves against bandits and marauders, and so that means also in one sense, Bodhidharma taught not only meditation and also something, you see, profitable. You see, how to defend oneself, how to be useful. You see, otherwise only meditation will not come. And so this is, only I say in passing. Martial arts, in Europe, they go, the monks, very often, they do a lot of feats, martial feats and so on, performances. But, nowadays, it is only sort of skill, otherwise you can't do. If you get guns or knife, you can't do anything with the martial arts. But anyhow, like martial arts, like Aikido or Karate, all were inspired by this sort of martial arts, Shaolin martial arts. Actually, they say like Aikido and so on, you could even disarm weapons. I don't know, maybe at least the master who taught Aikido, for example, seems to have been an extraordinary man. You see, extraordinary feats he performed. But anyhow, this is on passing. I just mentioned that. But remember this kovan. So my heart mind is restless without peace. You see, how can you attain peace? And you have to attain peace not after death, here and now. Realize your heart mind. Realize here and now. Okay. Take. What did you say yesterday? You recited this? Take Bodhisattva vow, page 13.
Bodhisattva vow. When I look at the real form of the universe, all is at the manifestation of the teisho of Tathagata. In any event, in any moment, in any place. None can be other than the marvelous revelation of this glorious light. This realization will inform the teachers and virtuous Zen leaders, extend in their care with the heart of worship, for animals and birds and indeed to all beings. This realization teaches us that the daily food, drink, and clothes and protections of life, and all flesh and blood, the merciful incarnation of Buddha.